Good morning and welcome to Tapestry Church Online. We're so glad you're joining with us today. This is week whatever of social distancing. I just can't keep track. But no matter what, we still have a God that loves us and takes care of us. And we're going to be singing about that this morning. We're going to be learning about him this morning. So wherever you're at, stand to your feet and let's sing to Jesus this morning. Here we go.
Peace, bring it all to peace. The storm surrounding me every way. At your name, still, calm the sea to still, the rage in me to still every wave. At your name, Jesus, Jesus. You made the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear, Jesus, Jesus. You made the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. Breathe, call these bones to live. Call these lungs to sing once again. I will praise. Breathe. Call these bones to live. Call these lungs to sing once again. I will praise. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. For I spoke a word, you singing over me. You're a man so, so good to me. For I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You've been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves denied. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When I was your foe,
when I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I feel no worth, you paid it all for me. You've been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the night denied. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah, yeah. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the night denied. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah, yeah. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, healing in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing in this place. Yeah, I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I can see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I can see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I can see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I can see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Sing it again. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you You are way make, miracle work, promise keep, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. God, I just thank you that you're such a great God, and you love us so fiercely. Even in the darkest times where we find ourselves alone, you're always there. That's what I love about you. You're so consistent. So be with us this week. Help us to love people the way you love us. Help us to see people in the way you see them. God, we love you. It's in your name pray. Amen.
Good morning, Tapestry. It is good to be coming into your living room, across your television, computer, phone, however I'm coming across to you this morning. It's good to be able to talk to you this morning. We are in the thick of summer. Next week is July 4th weekend. And as I was thinking about all of that, we normally don't have service on July 4th. We're going to keep that tradition up this year. So next week, you could turn on your computer, but I won't be there. You can just watch one of the ones you missed and then have church like that. But as I was thinking about this we're getting ready to run into July 4th and all of what that means and what's that going to look like this year and all of that. Like, are we going to have the same big celebrations? Who knows? Depends on where you're at. Depends on how you feel about things. But I started thinking about those celebrations of freedom and all of that July 4th means, and contrasting that with so many of the things that are going on in our country right now, it just really got me thinking. And before I start on what we're going to talk about today, I need you to do something for me. I need you to take off all of the filters that you use to filter incoming information, right? So take off your Democrat filter, your Republican filter, your Libertarian filter, your CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, whatever filter you normally run things through. I need you to take that filter off and just listen to what I say. All right, don't jump to conclusions and finish my thoughts before I say them and forget to listen to what I actually say. Try to listen to what I say, because not as code speak for any singular issue, right? That I'm trying to get you to take a side on an issue, because there's issues, and I've got a side, and I could try and convince you a side, but you're going to be tempted as I start talking about this. You're going to be tempted to think that I'm talking about whatever political issue gets you. So whether it be, Black Lives Matter, or gun rights, or flags, or, healthcare, gay marriage, whatever it is, you're going to think that I'm getting you to take a side. But what I'm going to say has nothing to do with any of those things specifically. And it has everything to do with all of those things. Confused? Good. Pay attention. Here we go, right? Well, what I'm going to say, you can't be guessing. So don't worry about trying to guess and figure out what I'm getting at. I'm going to say what I'm getting at within this. So try your best to take off the filter and listen to what I actually say. The thing that we probably are most thankful for in the United States, even if you haven't thought about it for a long time, maybe don't even really realize that this is the thing that you're actually thankful for. The thing that we're probably the most thankful for is the Bill of Rights, right? Most countries don't even have a Bill of Rights, right? The Bill of Rights was created to protect our individual, and our word for the day, freedom. Our individual freedoms. And the Bill of Rights was the collective name given to the first 10 amendments added on to the Constitution, right? And just to review, because probably if I asked you to list out what all was in the Bill of Rights, you probably could come up with 2, maybe 3, and then you'd start struggling. So here's a quick review of what's in the Bill of Rights. Freedom of speech. That's a good one, right? That's why I can get up here and talk like I do on a weekly basis. It's why you can say anything that you want about what it is that I just said, right? And you can post whatever you want on Facebook, and you can get on other people's pages and, start flaming them and starting fight, whatever you want to do. Freedom of speech, there you go. That's a good one. Here, what else is in there? Freedom of press, that's a solid thing. Freedom of assembly. Right? We don't have to register with the government as an entity, as a church, to get permission to be able to meet together. Freedom of assembly, that's a good one. Freedom of religion. All right. Freedom to bear arms. All right. Right to due process. We all look forward to fulfilling our patriotic duty of jury duty, right? Right? Yeah, okay. But due process. Yeah, you get a shot. You get your day in court. What else? Freedom from search and seizure. That's a good one. Freedom from cruel and unusual punishment. I'm behind it. Oh, everybody's going to be feeling good about this one. Freedom from having to quarter soldiers. I know that's a relief to many of you that you just discovered you don't have to let soldiers bunk with you. But thinking about all of that and not even really getting into how much we're living up to those freedoms in every category, those rights, but thinking about all of that, it brings up an interesting idea. And that's this. If the Bill of Rights were written today, what would be the things that we would be most focused on? All right, what would be those things? Right to free Wi-Fi. I've heard that called right to free education, right to free health care. Others would say, the right to free enterprise. Some would say, freedom from government interference. We've got all these things that we're like, okay, these are things. But if the Bill of Rights was written today, it would probably look much different than the way it looks having been written a couple hundred years ago, right? Now, the guys who wrote the Bill of Rights, they were pretty smart. They didn't get everything right, but they knew that things would evolve. They knew that things would change, and so they put in the 9th Amendment, right? And the 9th Amendment is the catch-all. That should be our favorite amendment. If anybody ever asks you, what is your favorite amendment in the Constitution? 9. 9 is your answer. Here's why. Because it's the catch-all. If they left something off of the list of freedoms, the 9th Amendment is basically, and that too. And that to add on, they knew that someone would try and say that, well, the things listed are the only rights there are. And they wanted to nip that in the bud, right? They wanted to say, no. There's other things that we didn't list that are still rights. Here's what the 9th Amendment says. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights, all those rights we just talked about, shall not be construed to deny or disparage others, talking about other rights, retained by the people. It's basically a bunch of legal language to say this, is that we've mentioned a few specific rights so far in the Bill of Rights, but there are others that go beyond what we have listed. If we were to rewrite the 9th Amendment in our language today, it might look like this. I have the right to do what I want, when I want, with whomever I want, as long as it doesn't interfere with anyone else's 9th Amendment rights. That's probably somewhere along that line is what it is, because we think as Americans that whatever I want, it is my right. Now, here's the problem. If you give someone rights, but those rights are not coupled with responsibility, things go horribly wrong. Case in point, did any of you ever, when you had learned to drive, did any of you ever get your car privileges taken away by your parents? I'll raise my hand. I did for sure. Why was that? You were old enough to drive, so you had a right to do that. The government gave you a license, right? Your parents gave you the keys to the car, and so everything was going on, and it was your right to drive, and then all of a sudden you did something. You didn't have the responsibility to go with it. Maybe you broke curfew, or you got a speeding ticket, or you wrecked the car, or did something like that. Now all of a sudden you no longer have the right to drive, right? And because there was no responsibility. I was thinking back in my experience when I was a young idiot. I'll say idiot. When I was a young idiot. Now I'm an old idiot. But when I was a young idiot and I had just gotten my license, well, we won't talk about the car that I wrecked 2 days after getting my license and totaled. So then when I did get to drive, I got to drive the family minivan, right? And I think it was I can't remember the year exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was an 89 Plymouth Voyager. And it was black, and it had the fake wood panel going down the side, chick magnet. It was awesome. But I got to drive that. And there was this specific road that when I would be driving alone and I would be going to basketball practice or something, it was a long straight road and it had a little downhill. Now, this 4-cylinder van, really never had any muscle to it, wouldn't go very fast. But you get a long enough stretch with a down slope, you get going. So I decided to see how fast I could get that van going. I'll tell you this, and then we'll just move on. 104 miles an hour is not safe in a Plymouth minivan. Just not. And so responsibility, lack of it, will ruin your rights. Right? In individual rights have to come with responsibility. And in a nation that has rights without responsibility, the result is anarchy. That's the ultimate end result. Liberty without responsibility ultimately undermines liberty. See, we're so proud of our liberty and our freedom in this country, but in other words, liberty can destroy liberty. Think about that one for a minute. So that brings us to this question. Why is there a Bill of Rights, but no Bill of Responsibility? Why do we have something outlining all of our freedoms, but nothing outlining our responsibility? Here's why. The authors of the Constitution, and you see this throughout all of the writings of the Founding Fathers, when it comes to the documents that our country is established with, they assumed moral guardrails. At least their writing did. I don't know if they in reality actually expected it, but their writing assumed moral guardrails that would provide an impetus towards responsibility. They assumed that everyone had a certain moral, ethical standard. And it kind of made sense in that time. Look at what they were coming out of. Everybody was united. You had just come out of the Revolutionary War. Right? They were no longer English or French or Spanish. They were Americans. Right? There was a shared value system. There was a shared camaraderie amongst the colonies. And they weren't all Christians, to be sure. But nearly everyone believed in at least a God. Right? And there was this kind of shared moral code within the country. And in fact, there were 3 assumptions that you can find in the writings of the Founding Fathers. The first one is this. There was a consensus of conscience. That means generally people believed that the same things were right and wrong. Now, whether the nation as a whole had it right, that the things they thought were right were actually right, or vice versa, up for debate. But there was a consensus. There was also a consensus of divine accountability. Right? America was ordained by God, which led to a whole other set of issues like, just spend some time reading about manifest destiny. That'll open your eyes to some things. But there was this sense that America was ordained by God, and generally everyone believed that because of that, you were going to have to answer to God. There was also an individual expression that they also believed that individual expression was governed by concern for other individuals. There was not this attitude of this is my right and it doesn't matter how it impacts other people. There was much more a sense of my rights aren't just about me, right? I'll use my rights to protect others. And the most famous example of this is found in the preamble of the Declaration of Independence. Look at how they tie the divine to the personal. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Of course, this beautiful expression was not as true in practice as it was in principle, but regardless, where did your individual rights come from? Well, they would say they came from God. That's what the founding fathers would say. They would say they came from God, not the government. They said, endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our rights, they thought, came from God. Therefore, we are responsible to God for how we exercise our individual rights. John Adams, who was the second president of the United States, he had been vice president to George Washington. He was against slavery, never owned a slave in his life. He wrote this: "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It was rewritten with the assumption of a people, nation with morals and with a religion that was accountable to God." Here's his next sentence: "It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." In other words, if there isn't a moral consensus and a sense of accountability, this grand experiment in freedom will fail, right? And if there is freedom without responsibility, liberty will devour liberty. Because what happens is my rights begin to compete with your rights. And when my rights clash with your rights, who's to say who's right? Well, when rights collide, the courts decide. You see what I did there? I rhymed it. When rights collide, the courts decide, right? And that was not the intent of the founding fathers. That's not how they wanted to set the nation up. Because when it's up to the courts to decide, our government must make law after law after law to address every single possible eventuality, right? It's why we have so many laws. And however many laws you think we have, you're not even close. There's way more. There's way more than that, right? It's why we have, and in a culture where the only accountability is to the law and the government, well, then the courts are the ones that have to decide. Now, here's the issue with the law, right? Here's the issue with the law represents the minimum requirement, right? Law represents this question: how low can I go? That's what the law is. The law is, here's the bar that if you get below it, we're going to have to step in and do something. But law is essentially the line that we can walk right up to, as long as we don't cross it, right? And when there's no greater accountability or there's no greater responsibility sensed amongst people, then we go as low as we can go. It's why we have to have laws. Because our mentality is, what can I get away with? That's, as people, that's our mentality, right? And those are the questions that the law answers. But listen, the law is powerless to do the most important thing. The law cannot inspire someone to greatness. The law cannot inspire people to excellence. The law cannot inspire people to be a people of virtue. The law can only answer the question, how low can I go? Right? Traffic laws. Traffic laws are important. But traffic laws do not create courteous drivers. They don't. Tax laws don't make you generous or financially responsible. Civil laws do not make you civil. Neighborhood association standards do not make you a good neighbor. DUI laws do not inspire you to sobriety. Assault and battery laws don't make you a nice person. A marriage license doesn't make you a good spouse. The right to free speech won't make you a kind person. And the reason is because laws are powerless to inspire. Right? I mean, you have the right to sleep with whoever you want, as long as they're a consenting adult. There are no laws that will inspire you to marital faithfulness or fidelity, because that's not what laws do. So where do those things come from? If the law doesn't do it, where does that inspiration come from? As a result, here's where we are. We have individual rights that are regulated by law. That's how our country's set up. But that is a recipe for us to be as selfish as we can possibly be. And in this system that we've created for ourselves, that we're living in this system, rights become nothing more than an exercise of power. And in this system and the resulting culture, we find ourselves in a culture where the rich will always rule over the poor, right? Where women will become more and more of a commodity, where children will always be the victims, right? Where if it's legal, it's moral, right? Law informs conscience, and everybody looks for a loophole, right? God bless America that this is the culture we've created. But it is. And here's the kicker. Our legal system is permanently decoupled from moral and divine absolutes, right? It's permanent. We're not going back. We're never connecting those two things back together. That train's left the station. But there is hope. There is hope, and that hope is you. Because even though this number is declining and declining and declining, still at this juncture, 60 to 70% of Americans consider themselves to be some kind of Christian, right? And our conduct as Christians has the potential to bring about more change than any candidate that we can elect or any law that we pass. The best hope for our nation is not elections or laws, although those are important, and you should be educated and informed and a part of the process. But the best hope is the behavior of Christians. And let me show you why this is the case. 2,000 years ago, the Apostle Paul wrote a letter to the church in Galatia, which was a Roman province that, even though it was a Roman province, it had Greek thinking within its culture. And he was writing to the Gentile Christians, which most of us hearing this are Gentile Christians. And there was confusion about their relationship to the Old Testament and the Old Testament laws. Because they were being told, these Christians in Galatia, they were being told that they had to keep all of the Jewish laws, right? What you eat, what you wear, where you go, what you touch, how you worship. I mean, the whole 9 yards. They were told, if you're going to be a follower of Jesus, you've got to keep all of these Jewish laws. Right? And Paul was writing, and Paul writes, and he's like, no. That's not true at all. That's not how it works. You are under a different law. You're not under the Old Testament law. You're under the law of Jesus. Right? And so in making the case, he makes a statement that is so relevant for us. And it gives us direction on how to approach our nation's laws, how we should respond to our personal freedoms. Our natural inclination is to use our freedoms, to leverage our freedoms for personal advancement. That's human nature. And Paul says, not so fast. Listen, you are Christians, right? You've been given freedom, and it's vital how you respond to that. It's vitally important. And if Christians would follow this, what Paul's talking about, it would make all the difference in the world. Listen, if Christians followed this, our nation would not be facing many of the problems that it's facing this very moment. Here's what Paul says, Galatians chapter 5. He says, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free. And then here's his command. But do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. In other words, he says, do not use your freedom selfishly. And he says this because he knows us. Paul, 2,000 years ago, knows us. Right? He knows that when we are alone with our freedoms, we will tend to go as low as we can go. That's going to be our nature. Our natural tendency is to abuse our freedoms and to leverage our freedoms to benefit ourselves. But he says, no, you can't do that because you are Jesus followers. You're Jesus followers. You do not leverage your freedom for your own personal benefit, especially when it comes at the neglect of others. So Paul's saying you shouldn't be asking the standard questions, which are, what can I get by with? How low can I go? Is there a law against this? Rather, he says, and imagine what it looked like if all Christians did this. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. Now there's a thought, isn't it? No law can make you do that. No law can make you serve another person humbly in love. No law will inspire you to serve others. The law will only draw a line on how selfish you can be before you're in trouble. But you should use your freedoms to serve others. To serve others. Yes, it is your right not to, but you have the opportunity to. You have the opportunity to serve others. And then he takes us to one of the most well-known statements in all of the Bible. And Jesus spoke on this importance, and Paul comes back to it here. And I do my best to hit this about once every 2 to 3 months. He says, for the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. When you get up in the morning and you think, I am free to do whatever I want. I'm an American. I have freedom. I have the freedom to say what I want. I have the freedom to do what I want, to go where I want, to spend my money on what I want. Paul's saying, no. Instead of those being your thoughts, instead think this: I will use my freedom to love my neighbors. I will do for others what I want others to do for me. I will treat my spouse the way that one day I want my child's spouse to treat them, right? I will treat people that I work with the way I wish I'd have been treated at that last company, right? I'm going to listen to those who have different lived experiences than I have. I'm going to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. I'm going to look at everyone in my life through the lens of how I would want to be treated. And when I figure out how I would want to be treated in the situation, that's how I will treat others. Can you imagine one single day in America if every Christian did that? If every Christian used that mentality instead of saying, it's my right? Right? If everyone believed this way, there would be almost no need for any of our laws. right? Because when a nation stops asking, how low can I go? When a nation stops asking, what's the minimum standard of decency? Right? And begins asking, how good can I be? How can I love others? How can I carry others' burdens? Then at that juncture, the fine print on everything becomes irrelevant. Right? When you leverage your freedom for the sake of those around you, the world instantly becomes a better place. The only thing a police officer would have left to do would be to direct traffic. And the only reason that the police officer would have to direct traffic is because everybody would just be sitting at the intersection not going because everybody's waiting for somebody else to go first. Because we're being kind and treating others the way we would want to be treated. Lawyers would be out of a job because no one would ever be had, right? You might be thinking, Andy, that's police officers only doing traffic and lawyers out of this is silly. To which I would say, no, this isn't silly. This is basic Christianity 101. And for some reason, as a nation, collectively as the Christian church, we've forgotten this idea. But Paul doesn't stop there. It's as if Paul looks into the 21st century, right? And he tells us what will happen when we leverage our individual rights for selfish gain and forget that we're part of a larger community. Here's what happens when it becomes all about you and your freedoms. This is unbelievable. Verse 15, if you bite and devour each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. That's vivid. If you bite and devour each other, that means if we become people, as Christians are like, that's mine. No, it's mine. Well, I was here first. Well, the law says, well, I'm getting an attorney. Well, fine, I'm getting 2 attorneys. Sue early, sue often, right? I don't have to wear a mask. It's my right. Oh, oops. He says, listen, if this whole thing devolves into every person just being out for themselves and exercising the power of their right, with no concern as to what their rights are doing and how they're affecting the people around them, let me tell you where it goes. He says, you will become like dogs, biting and devouring each other, and you will destroy each other. See, our greatest concern as Americans is generally what will happen to us from people outside of America who don't like America, right? It's so easy for us to just paint so many other countries and people in different parts of the world as our enemies and want to do everything we can to protect ourselves and keep them out and make sure nothing ever just... But in reality, Americans are America's biggest problem, not people from the outside. And here's why. It's because we undermine our own liberty when we leverage our liberty for us alone. As long as it's my rights, it undermines this experiment in liberty and freedom that is the United States. And here's the thing. We have more rights than any other country on the planet at any point in history. And apart from a moral compass, those rights will become our undoing. They'll become our undoing. You don't have to look around you very hard to see this in practice. We will devour ourselves in our quest to be free as individuals and to exercise our rights. But the church can turn that around. Christians can turn that around. And not by becoming this unified voting block where we find an issue and I'll just stick to that and that becomes our thing, but by becoming a unified obedience block right? By becoming a group of people who wake up every single day and say, I am going to leverage my freedom to protect your freedom. I'm going to leverage my rights to protect your rights, not just my own. Can you imagine a day like that in America? I mean, it's almost unthinkable. Hey, here are some statements. If you're having a hard time imagining what that looks like, here's a few statements that can get you going. You can say this to yourself: I'm going to do what is just, not what I can justify. I'm not going to ask how low I can go and what can I get away with. I'm not going to look for the loopholes that I can justify my actions. No. I'm going to ask, how high can I reach? And how can I help others? Here's another statement that might help you. Do what is responsible, not what is permissible. If you are not willing to take responsibility for the potential of outcome of a decision that you make, don't make that decision. Don't make that decision, because somebody has to be responsible for your irresponsibility. So let's stop that as Christians. Let's attach responsibility to our freedom. Instead of saying, that's my right, maybe we should start thinking about, that's my responsibility. Here's another one. Do what is moral, not what is modeled. Immorality, by your definition, put whatever definition you want on it. Immorality is undermining this country. It is, and we cannot afford to continue on this path. We have got to, as followers of Jesus, we've got to stand up and say we are done taking our cues, our moral cues from what is modeled around us, right? And it would be so easy as a preacher to sit here and be like, look at society, we're not taking our moral cues. But unfortunately, many churches in this arena have done no better than society around us in modeling moral cues. You are part of a community in which you are paying for, both financially and consequentially, for the model of I can do what I want when I want. It's my right. But listen, you and I, as followers of Jesus, we should become new models. And here's what we should do. We should honor God. We should honor God. And I put this in here because this is kind of our catch-all Ninth Amendment, right? It simply means every time you make a decision to do something, every time you make a decision to utilize your freedom, to take advantage of your rights, ask yourself, does this honor God? Does this honor God? And regardless of how long you've been a Christian, regardless of how much Bible you know or how often you pray, you intuitively know the answer to that question when you ask it. It's self-evident. Can you imagine all of the Christians in America behaving like this? Can you imagine? But listen, this is Christianity 101. This is like ground level. Jesus pulled it all down into one command. That's what this is. I'm glad we have the Bill of Rights. I'm glad we have laws in our nation that don't let us sink to even further depths. But we've been called to do better. We've been called to do better. We've been called to love our neighbor as ourselves. We've been called to do unto others as we would have done to us. We've been called to carry each other's burdens. We've been called to leverage our rights for the rights of others. It is the only way that liberty will not devour itself. Our default position should not be, it's my right. Our default position should be, How do I leverage my rights for the benefit of those around me? Because we are called to be better. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this passage. I thank you for these words that you inspired Paul to write, because Lord, this is so relevant in our current day. Lord, if everyone who proclaimed to be your follower would grab hold of this principle and stop looking at everything that's their right, as their privilege, as power to be flexed, but look at those things, look at those freedoms, look at those rights as tools to use to leverage for the benefit of those around them. Lord, our country would change overnight. And God, I beg that your followers begin to see this truth. Lord, I pray everyone that is listening to this message, that God, they not be able to shake this, that they have a new filter for their life when it comes to the decisions they make and the way that they exercise their freedom and take advantage of their rights. Because Lord, right now I'm watching a country in which freedom is devouring itself. Lord, following you, humbling ourselves, and exercising our rights for the rights of others is the only way this thing is going to turn around. And Lord, that is what I pray for. Lord, I thank you for your mercy and for your grace. In your name, amen. Thank you so much for being with us today. Once again, next week, there's not going to be any new service. You can use that. If you're going to miss us, you can use it as a time to catch up on some of the ones that you may have missed in the past. But I hope you have a great week and a great 4th of July. We'll see you in 2 weeks.